Pasha Shmini, we had some tumas. In other words, besides for the fact, you're saying the shir, besides for the fact that last week we talked about kosher, what's called kosher and treif. It's really kosher and treif is not yeshiva shesprach. Yes, in halacha it's not kosher and treif, it's tummy and tahir. When something is allowed to be eaten, it's called tahir. When something is not allowed to be eaten, it's called tummy. It became kosher and treif, which is it's a borrowed term. It's not a precise use of the words. But last week we already had tumas, right? We had tumas nevela, and we had tumas sheretz. Tumas nevela, which are both ava tumas. Last week we had tumas nevela and tumas sheretz. This week, I'm sorry?
The first tumas we learned about yeshiva.
V'chiyuta, right. This is a hechshen. That's a tumas hechshen. Now, this week you have a ribi tumas, right? You start off with tumas yeldus, then comes tumas tzaras, tumas negoyim. You have negei adam, you have negei batim, you have negei begodim, negei batim, which is I think tomorrow's chitas, and you also have in tumah itself negei erbosar, negei shchen, negei michven, negei nesek, negei dartin. There's different kinds of negoyim. Then at the end of this week's parsha, that means nechitas of tomorrow and Shabbos, you have Zov and Nida and Balkeri. Lyhadus is the beginning.
I think it's actually
Right, you have two tumas by a man, a more strict tumah which is Zov, and a less strict tumah which is Balkeri, and you have two tumas by a woman, the more strict tumah is Zov, and the less strict tumah is Nida. Now, the other tumah you have in the Torah that's not in these parashas is tumas mes. Tumas mes, in many ways, is the most severe of all tumas. Tumas mes, the most right, the Rebbe brings in the Sichas, I remember the Rebbe saying it. Niskarkem uponav shel Moshe, b'ameh tehei ta'arasi. When the Eibishter told him that if a person becomes tummy, if he encounters a bar minon, so the Eibishter, Moshe Rabbeinu's face turned red, and he said, how can such a thing become Torah? The Eibishter answered him, Zeish chol kasatera. So the word is azoy. There's a lot of other tumas, right? And you had them emes last week also. Tumas eichel and umashkin, tumas klicheres. The klicheres can never be an avatuma. It can never be an avatuma. You can't be mitayred, but it can be avatuma. You have tumas eichel, you have tumas mashkin. But in terms of avatumas, rubam kekulam are in this parsha. Last week you had sheretz and avela. In Pashas Chukas you have tumas meis. The other avatumas are in these two parshas, right? Yeldus, Meteira, Zav and Zava, and that the Nida and Balkeri. So there's a Indian, which we know, which is that although the worst tumah is tumas meis, in a certain way, tumas meis is not the worst tumah. Why? Because when a person becomes tummy from the meis, the tumah comes from outside of him. Another person passed away. That person has enough life to still be metameh him. The tumas in our parsha are called tumah hayetze alav b'gufay. The tumah comes from inside of you. In other words, last week, nevela and sheretz, they're avatumas, but you're touching something. But the yeldus and a nida and a zava and a zav and a balkeri and a metera, the tumah comes from inside the body. So there's a unique addition. You become tahir, however you become tahir, and with the exception of Mitzayra, all of these tumas are very simple. You go to the mikveh, but then you have to count, right? By the Zava and the Zava, you got to count. You have to count. And by the emphasis Nidi, you also have to count, but it's a different kind of count. But you're tahir going to the mikveh, that's it. But by Tumah She'eta Lov Megufei, there's a chumrah which you do not have even by Tumas Mes. And that is that you bring a korban for the end of for the Gemara Tara. You bring a korban to become tahir from a tumah. Bring a korban from a tahir from a tumah. It's true by a yeldus, it's true by a metzera, it's true by a zav, it's true by a zav, it's true by a nidin or malkeri. Whatever. Maybe I overstated it, but you get the point. When a tumah comes out of your body, even though tumas meis is in some ways worse, but this idea that when the tumah comes from inside your body, in this aspect is worse, that the tara is not enough. You have to bring a korban. Or to say it in other words, there's two steps. You have to go from tumah into tahara, and then you have to go from Tahara to be open to Kedusha again. Korbanos HaKodesh.
Really 3 steps.
Ah.
Tvul Yom, is that in the middle somewhere?
Yeah.
That's going from Tumah to Tahara.
But then there's also Mechusar Kippurim.
Right, so I'm talking about B'chusei Kippurim. You go out from Tumah to Tahara, and then it's not enough to... the Tahara is not complete until you bring a korban, you go back into Kachim. It's called B'chusei Kippurim. It's only by these tumas that come out of your body. So you go to the mikveh, and as Moshe just pointed out, when you go to the mikveh, you're right away tired. You could eat Ma'aseh Sheni. You could eat Ma'aseh Sheni. You're not metama other things necessarily. Huh?
No, you can't.
No. To eat truma, you have to wait for the sun to set. You have to wait for the sun to set. I heard you say in the Mishnah. May Ema say, truma, you have to wait for Harim. But then you have to wait till the next day to bring a korban. This is a very funny thing, especially because we have any more copies that the korban that you bring includes a chatas, a eila and a chatas. Meila, oila, and by mitzvah you have to bring an osham. Meila and oila, no. You bring a korban to come closer to the Eibishter after you were estranged. But a chatas, what kind of aved did a person do? It became tummy. Forget the biggest mitzvah in Torah is to have a baby. A lyhadus. It's the biggest mitzvah in Torah. Just to bring a korban chatas. What kind of aved did you commit? And the other things also. I mean, yeah, but that's the halacha. You mean chatas.
What chilek is it?
This is chilek of zayin.
Aaron. This is chilek of zayin. Actually, this comes from the father. It's chilek of zayin.
So in this sikha, the Rebbe presents us with a fascinating iyun. It's an analysis. Okay, a person was tamei, goes to the mikveh, becomes tahir. In order to eat truma, he has to wait for the sun to set. In order to eat kachim, he has to go into the Beis Hamikdash and he has to bring what they call tinim, right? These are birds, right? Tinim. You have to bring a kapara, a chatas, and a oila, and then you clean yourself from this chesed of the B'chusei Kippurim, they go into the Beis Hamikdash. This sikha, so there's different halachas. What a person who toiveled in the mikveh before night fell is allowed and not allowed to. He's called a tvul yom. Once the night falls, he's no longer a tvul yom, so he can eat truma. He's allowed to go further into the Beis Hamikdash, but he's not allowed to go mamish into the Azara. There's different halachas about what's the status of a tvul yom. Tvul yom means you toiveled and the sun didn't set, and then a B'chusei Kippurim means you toiveled and the sun set, and then it's being korban the next day. One of the strange halachas is that midiraisa, and of course by us we have all the chumanas. We take on all the chumanas of all the shittas, so we don't even all of the mitzvahs, so we don't even realize it. But a woman has a baby. If she has a boy, she waits 7 days. If she has a girl, she waits 14 days. And she tovels in a mikveh even if she's still bleeding, mamish. And as soon as she tovels in a mikveh, she's a tahira, and the blood that's coming out of her guf is not metama anymore. But until the end of 40 days, 7 plus 33 in the case of a boy, or in the end of 80 days, that means 14 plus 66, she's called, in quote, Tvulas Yom Aruch. She toiveled after the 14 days. She toiveled after the 7 days. She's muteres labala. She's not tmeya. But she's not allowed to eat truma, and she's not going to the Beis Hamikdash. It's called Tvulas Yom Aruch. Her status of Tvul Yom, she toiveled in the mikveh, but the sun hasn't set for her last 33 days or 66 days. When the 40 days end and the 80 days end, as soon as that sun sets, she can eat truma. No problem. And the next day, she has to bring a korban, which means a korban is called the B'chusei Kippurim. So we're going to learn in the Sikha, you'll see in a minute, a machlokes between the Rambam and the Ravid. It looks like a machlokes between the Rambam and the Gemara, but the way it plays out is a machlokes between the Rambam and the Ravid. What is the status of B'chusei Kippurim? I'm going to read it to you inside. The Ravid holds that B'chusei Kippurim is tummy. Until you bring the korban, you have a status of tummy. The Rambam holds, until you bring a korban, you're missing tahara. The Rambam is edeler. The Ravid holds when a person toiveled in the mikveh and the sun set, he can eat truma. He still has a category of truma until he brings the korban. The Rambam disagrees, and the Gemara seems to be saying like the Ravid. The Rambam disagrees and says after you toivel and the sun sets, there's no truma on you anymore. There's simply a lack of tahara. Okay, we're going to learn the Rambam and we're going to learn the Ravid. But that's not this Sikha. This Sikha is Rashi. Rashi says on page 82, okay, the last words of the first paragraph, Kruya Tmeya. Kruya Tmeya. I'm showing you the words. She's called Tameh. Not she's Tameh. Not she's Tahir. She's called Tameh. That's the Sikha. The Rambam and the Ravid is only the Reka. The Rebbe sets the stage. The Ravid says until you bring your carbon, there's still a category of Tumah. The Rambam holds after you tabled in the mikvah, the sun said there's no more Tumah, you're missing Tahara. And the Rashi finds a middle ground. Not like the Rambam, it says you're not Tummy anymore, all you're missing is Tahara. Not like the Ravid, you're still Tummy, you're called Tummy. And this drives the Rebbe crazy. And that's the Sikha. So it's really a Rashi Sikha. But what makes a Rashi Sikha so special is the Reka. By first telling you the Machlokes Rambam and Ravid, so the Rashi is very interesting, because the Rashi is Pashat walking within the raindrops. He's not saying like the Ravid, and he's not saying like the Rambam. He's saying, the Rebbe actually says, like I show you the words inside before we start, on page 83, second column, second paragraph, just look at the first few lines. 83, second column, second paragraph. The fun is moving as like Pshuta Shal Mikra is the gather from a Chusek Kippurim by Yeldus of a Drit Neufen. Not Rambam, not Ravid, but it's by Yeldus. You would ask the same question by Azova and by Azov and by a Metzeda, and there would be very stark kashas. By a Yeldus, specifically by a Yeldus. The tenets that the Rebbe gives in the Sikha by Yeldus is not going to work by the others. It's only going to work by a Yeldus. So you could re-ask this whole question. How would Rashi understand the status of Mechusek Kippurim by all the others? By a Metzeda and by a Zov and by a Zov. But by a Yeldus, you're not Tameh, but you're called Tameh. You have a name of Tumah. It's not just that you're missing a Tad, you have a name. This is what this Sikha is going to be about, okay? Let's learn. From the beginning. In Pasuk B'Sei Pashat Yeldus, the very beginning of Pashat Tazriah, page 80. The Chipar Allah Kain V'Tahera, that the Kayin brings two animals or two birds for the woman who's a Muchaseres Kippurim. Later the Gemara learns V'Tahera, and she becomes pure. Meklal Shahayat Meya, Shit until the Gemara says from the word V'Tahera, and she becomes purified. Until the karbanos are brought, she had a status of tum. In other words, as a mechusek kippurim, someone who is lacking the karban, which is going to culminate the tara from a tumah hayetzi alav migufay. Nachdem was taval, he went to the mikveh. Unhead of shimshei, and the sun set, and he can eat truma. Eider gebrach kaparasei, until he brings the kapara is tummy. He's still tummy, and he brings 3 dinim. The most important one of these 3 dinim is that if this fellow will go into the Beis HaMikdash and do the avoid, he is chayav misa. According to the Gemara, if a person was a tful yom and the sun set and he goes to the Beis HaMikdash, the avoid is chayav misa. Now the sun has to set, so l'chayda by night there's no Beis HaMikdash. But the halacha would be that until you bring your carbon, you remain at tful yom, even many days pass. If a tful yom, according to the Gemara, does avoid with which chayav misa because he's tamei. Okay, and the Rambam is going to disagree with this. You'll see soon. Next paragraph. The Rambam in Sefer Aryad bring the drosha in Tzvei. The Rambam brings the same Gemara based on the same pasuk from V'Tahera in 2 different places. Skip the bracket. Aber b'shini losh. He uses a different expression. V'Tahera. What does the word V'Tahera mean? Meklal shadayin le'nigmara and then gomra taharos. The Rambam doesn't say you're still tummy until you bring the carbon. Your Tara is not complete. Translates the Rebbe. Fun, Lashon, Rambam is moving. It's clear from the Rambam's expression. As the Chesed of Mechusek Kippurim, that a person who was Tamei, the Tumah came out of his goof, and he did what he needed to do to prepare himself, and he toiveled in the mikveh, and he waited for the sun to set, but he hasn't yet brought his karban, is nit azoi machmas the mechiyah from Tumah. It's not because he would be mechuyah, because he's still Tamei. Klaim. Chatas durch dem was Tavel had of Shimshei is a geworden toy lekami in yonim. Even though when he taivad in the sunset he's telekami in yonim. Skip the parenthesis. Is in Kedesh Mikdash fablib in the Tumah. But when it comes to Kachum in the Beis HaMikdash, he's still Tomei. Next paragraph says no. No. According to the Rambam, once you toivel and the sun set, there's no issue of tumah. Das is mitzad der shlila chisarin b'tahara. Right? If you wanted to be very grub, you would say the Rambam was arguing with the Gemara. The Rambam was arguing with the Ravid. The Rambam had understood the Gemara ganz fine, and the Rambam didn't learn the Gemara like this. The Rambam had a different Gemara, whatever it is. And the Rambam held, once the sun set, after you went to the mikveh, you're not tamei anymore, you're simply lacking tahara. Next paragraph. The Rambam says it explicitly when he introduces you to a mechusar kippurim. If you look in footnote 11, Reish Hilches mechusar kippurim, it says like this. This is a philosophical presentation, right? Why is there such a category of a person who went to the mikveh and he waited for the sun to set and he can already eat truma and he's told mechusar is lacking kapara atonement? Because each one of the mechusar kapura, and I guess there are 6 of them. How many are there? There's zav and there's zava and there's yildus and there's metzeda and there's, that's only 4.
Nida.
Nida, Zav.
Nida is a bringing carbon.
Sorry,
No.
Zava.
A zav and a zava and a yildus and a metzeda. That's 4. That's it. I guess there's 4 of them. Shekol echad, each one of them. Afapisha tahad mitumasa. He's completely tahad from the tumah. V'tavali went to the mikveh. Ahead of Shimshon sunset. Adayinu chassid. He's lacking because v'legomra taharasai. His purification is not yet complete. K'nelechal b'kodeshim to eat karbonis until he brings the carbon the next day. Last 2 lines of that paragraph. Thus hastis means that Isser is nidr farv said is noch tamei. That Rambam is going to say your prohibition to go into the Beis Hamikdash need karbonis is not because you're tamei. Not about is chaser b'tahara. You're missing tahara. Okay, and the next paragraph he brings a raya from Psuk. Okay, listen to this. Bracket. Okay, Mendel, special for you. Bracket. There's another raya to this quote unquote machlokes between the Rambam and the Gemara from the Psuk. Therefore, with benegedem isel ikonis lemikdash. When it comes to the idea that a mechusar kippurim is not like going to the Beis Hamikdash, let it up the Gemara from Eitu Masebei. That Rambam learns, the Gemara learns, that a person who taivet and the sun set, but it didn't bring his kippurim to the Beis Hamikdash. Eitu Masebei. Eitu Masebei is a weird pasuk to bring. You know why? Look at number 15. It's by Tumas Mes. Tumas Mes is not a mechusar kippurim. But the Gemara learns from Oy Tumah Seibai that you can metar yourself from the Tumah completely and you're still Tumah. The Gemara learns, teaches us that a person who toiveled and the sun set is still Tumah. The Rambam learned this up from Pasuk Tavitahera. The Rambam is a different Pasuk. The Rambam doesn't say that until you brought your karbonis, Oy Tumah Seibai. The Rambam says until you brought the Kabbalah, there's a chasad and v'tahera. Meklal shining going to see. So to here, the Gemara brings one pasuk. The Rambam brings a different pasuk. The pasuk of the Gemara is saying there's still a tumah attached until you bring your carbon, and the pasuk that the Rambam is bringing is saying no, there's no tumah, but there's a chasad and tar. And now comes a Meredith Kiddush. Unesa nafkim mina lalacha bepeil. And this machlokes between the Gemara and the Rambam, again, it's not machlokes Rambam, but it's Gemara and Rambam and Ravid, as you see in a minute. Has nothing to do with Vibal the Rambam. Listen carefully. Vibal the Rambam led it. As I'm a chusar kippurim is nishtame. Since the Rambam holds that if you toiveled in the mikveh and the sun set, well, you didn't bring your carbon, you're not tamei. Skip the parenthesis. The Rebbe Paske the Rambam held the chusar kippurim okay the shimish is nish chayiv miseh. The Rambam holds that if a kohen goes into the Beis Hamikdash and he does the avoid and eats kodesh, and he didn't bring his kapara, he's not chayiv. The Gemara says chayiv misa. The Rambam disagrees. This time it's a different Gemara. It's a Yerushalmi or something. Because the Rambam holds you're not tamei, you're just not tahir. And for not tahir, in other words, it's push l'maisa enough committed. It's not just philosophical. It begins with philosophy. The Rambam holds that a person who did the mikveh stuff, but it didn't mean the carbon is not tamei. So if he ate kadeshim, he can't put him to death for it. Not of a den, it's an aveda. It's not allowed. Because there's missing tar. Machon der Ravid, here's the Ravid. Halt. As a mechusik you put him as chayav misa. Like the Gemara said earlier, over as masig if a Rambam, that Ivid pounces on the Rambam and he says, for Amrin b'makis, ei tumasei bay, he brings that other pasuk. That if you didn't bring your korban, it's not the pshat, you're missing tada, your pashat still tamei. Let Abbas mechusik you put him. Ve'eid v'teheid uksiv b'yeldes meklal of hashta tamei. That Ivid argues with the Rambam. He brings both pasuk, both the pasuk from the first paragraph of the Sikha, as well as the pasuk from the bracket at the bottom of page 80, and he holds that both psukim are saying that until you bring your korban, you're still tummy. Next paragraph, that Ivid let it. That Ivid disagrees with the Rambam, and he holds as the Gerdes Mechusar Kippurim that a person who was tummy and the tumah came out of his body, so he waited, he toiveled the mikveh, he waited for the sun to set, now look at the zachin. Is as biz me bring the kapar until he brings his korban is noch verblieben from the friedige tumah, the previous tumah remains, and the Rambam disagrees. Waldik. Yeah, machlokes. Let's not say Gemara Rambam, that's not comfortable. Rambam and I. The Rambam holds the mechusar, and I'm afraid to even say this, but I like the Rambam.
Like what?
I like the Rambam. Because it makes a lot of sense. You did your tahara, now you have to go back into kedusha. You know, it's like trivia law kind of. You know, you went away from the tumah, now you have to go back into kedusha. So it's not that you have a chesaron, it's you're missing a mila kind of thing. So the Rambam holds a person b'chosek Kippurim is missing tahara.
According to the Bible, what does mikveh accomplish?
That you can eat truma. That you can eat truma.
So the question
The
is,
tahara should go. The tumah should go away. The mikveh takes away the tumah. So what is the right? How does it take it around? Huh?
Here, page 80, second column, first paragraph, okay? This is how that I would explain it. Okay? Head of Shimshei is a geweren tohe lekame inyonim keil eich achilas trum. Is a abel inyan kedesh or mikdash fabliben de tum. You split it. You're tohed enough to eat truma, but you're still tomei the gabi kaddish.
So the same question: what does the mikveh accomplish?
That you can eat truma. The gabi tadas, you're tohed.
She's half tall.
Yep. Yeah.
After neither.
Yeah.
There's different darkness.
Yeah.
Half tall.
Yeah. I'll give you a better example. Maybe even a better
Today,
example.
a lady goes to nurse and puts it to the husband.
I'll give you a better.
Heat is not included in this level.
I'll give you a better example. I'll give you a better example. The halacha is to be retired isha labaylo. If the guy falls into the mikveh, she falls into the mikveh to hate labaylo. Yeah. When it comes to all the other tumas, so there's a bunch of steps. Right. The first step is Ma'aseh Sheni. The second step is Truma. The third step is Kachim Kalim. The fourth step is Kachim Kadishim. And the fifth step is Paras Chatas, Paraduma, yeah? If a guy toivels in the mikveh, even if he toivels in Man Chai, in other words, a well, and he has Kavana, that he's toiveling to eat Truma, he's Tamei for Kadishim. It's that Kavana. It's the same act. It's the same act.
Also with the Evans?
Yeah, of course. You know what? Let me not speak. But that's the halacha. It's toivel again. If a person toivels to eat korban shlamim, and then he wants to be in korban kachim kaddish, he must go back to the mikveh. It's the same exact ritual. The kavana changes the status of his tum and his tare.
You're allowed to do it the other way around.
Of course.
Always have in mind for
paras chatas, for korban aduma, yeah. The halacha by paras chatas is that there's no diminution of tumah. There's a rishon, there's a sheni, there's a shlishi, there's a revi, and then there's a chamishi. Right? The highest, right? When it comes to paraduma, 100th is still tummy. If tummy food such as tummy food, 100 down the road, it touched the path that they keep the paras chatas, it's tummy. There's no numbers, it's just endless. Okay, now here comes the Rashi. The Sikha begins now. Okay? And I have to say, the first part of the Sikha is technical. But Lepoil, the word of the Rebbe, is a Musaf word. It's Negel Allah, but what the Rebbe is going to finally say is a Musaf word. When you walk away from the Sikha, your big question is going to be that the answer that the Rebbe gives in this Sikha to explain Rashi only works by a Yeledes. It only works by a woman who had a baby. It doesn't work by Metzera, it doesn't work by Zava, and it doesn't work by Zav. In other words, you could ask the same questions that the Rebbe is going to ask in this Sikha again by them, because the answer that the Rebbe is going to give is only going to work by a Yeledes. But let's go. Oich Rashi. Rashi, Vipirusha, Latera, bring the Drasha over Tehera. He also brings the same pasuk, become pure. Aber is Meshane for Lashna Gemara, aber nicht für der Rambam. He changes from the Gemara, he doesn't want to say you're still Tommy. But he also doesn't want to say like the Rambam that you're already taught but you're missing in the Tara. And he says, V'tehera meklal sha'ad kan hi kruyatum. Until now you have a name of Tom. He says, Mamish as a halfway. Halfway between the Gemara and the whole Sikh has been valued around these words. That Rashi holds you in between still being Tomei and lacking Tahara. You're called Tomei. Das was Rashi sagt nicht bloß Gemara mekal shit made. He doesn't say the Gemara you're still Tomei. Yes, Shleim is simple. Because I'm Friedrich Pirish. Because if you look earlier in Rashi, he says Yemei Tahara, that when a woman has a baby and she's Dam Sheisesas, blood is falling out of her body from the delivery. For a boy it's 7 days, for a girl it's 14 days, and she's Toivel. And after she's Toivel, the blood that's coming her body after that is Dam Tahara. Yemei Teir Shalom. The days when the minute a Yeledes tables in the mikveh after 7 days, after 14 days, she's called days of purity. Now, parenthesis. Rashi says that after the 7 days or the 14 days for a boy and for a girl respectively, and she tables in the mikveh, Rashi says those days are pure. Unisht yemei teretzel bailo. Rashi doesn't say you're tamei for everything except for your husband. No, you're tired. So you see from the words of Rashi, is muchach, it's implicit, or it's indicated from Rashi's lashon, as the tags in the days are days of Tahara. In other words, parenthesis, bishleimus, shenigbaru. Rashi holds, when it says in the pasuk, Yemei Tahara, it doesn't mean Yemei Tahara labayla, it means Yemei Tahara, finished. So therefore, Rashi holds that if you become tahir, when you're tabled in the mikveh, they're called Yemei Tahara, he cannot say like the Gemara, that until you bring your carbon, you're a tameh. Because if the days before, when you're at Tfulas Yemora, the sun hasn't even set, you can't even eat Truma. The Chumash, not that, the Chumash calls it Yemei Tahara. And Rashi doesn't say Yemei Tahara Labayla, he says Yemei Tahara Stam. So Rashi is of the opinion that from those words in the Chumash, Yemei Tahara Zarai, that the minute she tables, she's tired. This is before Harav Shemesh, the sun hasn't even set, she can't eat Truma, but she's tired. So therefore Rashi cannot say the Gemara that she's coming. Okay? Next paragraph, please. Kumt Eis. So we see from this. As late Rashi, Pshute Shamik. And of course, the reason the Rebbe keeps saying this, I don't think we need to defend the Rebbe, but it's not going to go crazy when you learn Rashi Sichas. Right? Because it says in the Gemara. I don't understand. It says in the Gemara. And sometimes the Kasha, I don't understand. The Rashi and the Gemara. The Rebbe taught us that the Rashi and Chumash is a different level of Torah. There are contradictions, not between Rashi and the Gemara. There's contradictions between Rashi and Rashi. Rashi and Chumash says one thing, and Rashi and the Shas says another thing, because Rashi and Chumash is Pshute Shal Mikra. Rashi and Shas and Halacha. And in the format, the Reg is a Pshat, the Rebbe, Drush, and say it, Halacha is Drush. Shleishes Remediat Shatoyra Nedreshes Behem. There's Drushe, there's Medrash Agoda, and there's Medrash Halacha. So different rules. Chumash, Rashi is Pshut Shal Mikra. Rashi are the Shas and Halacha. So Rashi holds, and again, he's not arguing with the Gemara, it's a different level. Rashi's reading the Psukim. If it says in the Pasuk, Yemei Tahara, so she's tired the minute she tables. So what about the fact that she has to wait for the sun to set to eat Truma after 40 or 80 days, and she can't go into the Beis Rivka and Kachum until she brings Kabbanas? Is the Tuma slay the Nifka Gevara, the Tuma of giving birth was completely removed, Gleich noch die Zayin or Yadalad Yom, the minute the 7 days, the 14 days pass, even though she's not allowed to eat Truma, Alachas Kama V'Kama noch di Lamed Gimel Yom, how much more so if she waited the whole 33 days or 60 days and the sun set, but you can eat Truma. A does he bring them carbon, but she hasn't brought the carbon yet, so she can't go into the Beis Hamikdash. She can't eat Kodesh, but she can't call it Tomei. Can't call it Tomei. Never then, when high timer is move of us is nichayches to zog and fear them loshen shehit meya. Rashi cannot describe a woman who gave birth and she went to the mikveh as a tmeya. You can only describe her as kriyat meya.
Diplomacy.
Kriyat meya. Huh?
Diplomacy.
Last paragraph on page 82, please. Last paragraph on page 82, please. Und das ist der Machiluk zwischen Loshen and Rashi. This is the difference between the language of Rashi and Chumash and the Gemara. Late Pirush Hashem Teira Pshute shall make a child is learning Chumash with Rashi, and Rashi is explaining him the words of the Pesukim. Can men by Yeldes Muchaseres Kippurim, a woman who had a baby, who hasn't brought her carbon, need Zog in the Loshen Tomei, you can't call her Tomeya. Vurum euch frier, because even before the sunset, Fahar of Shemesh von Yemai Boim, is the Shengavemba Yemei Teresh. But you understand, Yemei Teresh is not in Rashi, it's in Pasuk. Uvim Leis Yemei Tahara Lebein Elabas. It's a biblical passage. Rashi says Yemei Tahara means days that are pure. You can't split hairs. You understand that Rashi is learning Chumash with a child. Now the Gemara can explain that you're taught for this and you're taught for that. But the Rashi says you made tar means you made tar. So the minute she titles, she's still asati truma. Forget about Kaddish. But a Tomei she's not. Not of a then she has to wait for the sun to set, not to being a Rabbanus, because so therefore Rashi can't say she's Tmei. Masha Enkel she just like a Gemara. The Gemara disagrees. The 33 days after she titles in the mikveh, or the 66 days after she titles in the mikveh, the dam is sheseses, and she's materes labayla. There you made tuma eich lagabe truma. She's tuma for kadeshim, and she's even tuma for truma until the tfulas yom orach ends. The sun sets after 40 days, and the sun sets after 80 days. Then she can eat truma. The next day she brings the carbon, then she can eat kadeshim. When the age is the bein kaparasa heat meya. Okay, so Rashi is not like the Gemara, but he's also not like the Rambam, and that makes us crazy. Yeah. So what's Rashi thinking? But the question is either gets on the hand. Wie bald as late Rashi is the Tumas laid in Nifka geworden, if Rashi agrees with the Rambam, that when you title the mikvah, even before the sun sets on the end of the 40th and 80th days, respectively, boy and girl, for her to eat truma, she's no longer tamei. Accordingly, the language of Rashi is still difficult. She has the label Tomei. She's not Tomei, but she's called Tomei. Says the Rebbe, Rashi should have said exactly the same thing that the Rambam says. She's missing Tara, like the Rambam says. Why does Rashi say she's not Tomei, but she's called Tomei? Yeah, right. I trust him in English. In either case, you've got a problem. Rashi lernt das dos was yet noch Achei Korban is ma'akev Tara. If Rashi holds until she brings a Korban, there's something wrong with her Tara. Skip the parentheses. Is doch nit nor was kriya Tomei is Tmei Lepeil. She's not just called Tomei, she's mamish Tomei. Und mir soll sagen, ich wollte verkehrt lieder on the other hand. As the Tumme is nifka geworden, the Tumme is gone. Und das was die Tantes in Kaddish. The fact that in Kaddish or Truma is it studied secondary thing is doch niet kein inyan from Kruya Tomei. She shouldn't even be called, shouldn't have the label Tuma. It's an Islach Kaddish. Don't say she's Tomei. Say she's not letting touch him. That's all. What's this label? It's in between label, right? You don't want to say she's missing Tara, but you don't want to say she's Tmeya. You're saying she's Kruya Tara. So this, what is the language of Rashi saying? It's very similar to the Rambam when it comes to Lamaise, but it's not. The Rambam says there's no Tumah left, there's just missing Tara. And the Rambam says there's a label of Tumah. Rashi says there's a label of Tumah. What is this label? Therefore, is move on. This walking between the raindrops of Rashi leads to the conclusion. Atleit Pshutei Shal Mikra, the according to Chumash Rashi, is the Geder from Chosek Yippurim by a Yildus. The criteria of a person who had a baby, and she waited 7 and 14 days, and she tabled in the mikveh. And then she waited the 33 more days or 66 days, and the sun should say she'd eat truma. But she cannot eat kachim, is a drit neif. It's not like Gemara that she's tmeya. It's not like a Rambam that she's mechusar ta'ara. She's kriya tmeya. The tumas laid is nifke geworden. The actual tum is gone. Gleich noch die Shivas Yom. As soon as the 7 days pass and she toibled in the mikveh. Und die später dicke Tage sein Tage in Meiter Shalom. Afterwards she's called in Meiter, as it says in the Chumash. Und the Rebbe kemen if nicht sagen she tmei, you can't call it tmei. But on the other hand, Abel Idach, he doesn't want to say like the Rambam. Is that Tam was he is also lechel b'kadashim. The fact that she can't eat kadashim, and before the 40th day and the 80th day and the sun setting, she can't even eat truma, is nicht der Fall, was es darf zukommen Tara. It's not that she's missing Tara, as the Rambam says, which is up to the card. Nor to leave, listen to this, to leave adin miyuchad by Yildus, it's a specific halacha by a woman who has a child, as afilu noch dem, wie the Tumah is from there back. The Tumah went away, bleibt noch der Shem Tumah. The name of Tumah remains. Kruya Tumah. The label of Tumah. I have to repeat this again. This Sikha is not going to explain how the Rashi would understand this criteria of Chosek Yippurim by a Metzera, by a Zav and a Zav. Only by a Yeledus. You'll see soon. It's specific to Yeledus. That she toiveled. She's halachically tahir. But she has a label of Tumah. This is what the Sikha is about. Why? What's this label about? Und da sagt Rashi is saying, and he's Mishanu and Madi, he changes from the Gemara and he emphasizes. V'tahera, when she brings the karbonis after the sun sets after 40 days, or the sun sets after 80, on the 41st day, 41st day, or the 81st day, she brings the karbonis. Miklal sha'atkan, until she brought the karbonis, he kruyat tmei. She has a label of Tumah. Nicht wie die Gemara sagt, because she tmei, not like but she's still tummy. But rather she is blois kruya tummy. She's called tummy. But here's the chap. Oh, but this is a hemshech from frier. It's a continuation before at kan kruya tummy. You see, one of the kashas that the Rebbe asked, if a lady tovels in the mikveh and she's tahir, but she can't eat korban, say also lechel korban. Don't say kruya tmei. So the Rebbe says, you don't understand. Kruyat Mei means because it's a hemshech to the earlier Tumah. And the diak is in the wording of Rashi, ad kan. Till now. Not kan means the Tumah from before continues ad kan in the category of Kriyas Shem. You understand? That's why Rashi doesn't want to say, she's Tahira but she can't eat Kodeshim. She's Tahira and she can't eat Truma. He says, ad kan Kruyat Mei, because whatever's left over from the Tumah, even though it's only a label, it's the old Tumah's label that remains. It's very beautiful. The diuk is the preciseness of the language of Rashi is, the Rebbe. Turn the page. Okay. Nocharaya. See, there's a lot of psukim. You see, by these sugyas, Hilchas Shabbos, the whole Hilchas Shabbos is a few letters in the Torah. Tum and Tares, you have arichas. There's the yukim in psukim. Listen to this. The hechlech of them in pshutei shall make riyashleim. The proof of this in Pshat is as follows. And he brings another psukim situation. That nimis in Pirush Rashi, durch noch hashini from Gemara. There's another place where the Gemara and Rashi quote different psukim to make their case. Listen. In Gemara shtei di drasha, when the Gemara says that a woman is still tummy and she brings a carbon and calls she because it has the words V'tehera, from Vart V'tehera Shabasiyim HaParasha, V'chipur Allah Kaim, the very first paragraph of the Sikha. V'tehera means you become pure, says the Gemara, until you bring your carbon, you're still tummy. Rashi talked to Sabbath. Rashi doesn't say to the V'tehera. On the earlier pasuk, V'kiriva L'fnei Adeshem V'chipur Allah, you bring the carbon as an atonement. V'tahara, you purify her Mimakoyer Dameha, from the root of her blood. Vitara mimkoileme. On those words, Vitara mimkoileme, I wrote that Rashi down. Miklal she'ad kanu kriyatame. Mimkoileme, meaning the Rashi quotes a pasuk to indicate the kriyatame from a tumah which is old. It's not a new tumah, it's a continuation of the old tumah. Okay? Skip the next paragraph. Last paragraph, first column, page 84. The beat of them. Lule dem posuk, v'tara mim koil dameh. If it didn't say in the pasuk that until you bring your carbon, you're purified from the source of your tumah, of her blood, then you would say that after a woman tavels in a mikvah, the fact that she can't eat terumah, and the fact that after she's no longer tefillim, she can't eat kodeshim, is not like an intuition of the old tumah, it's a new thing. Not as is an issa study, it's a secondary issa. Okay, next paragraph, top of second column 84. Until you bring your korban, you're not purified from the source of the blood. Kumteis as the Tarev was felt here, Rashi holds, from the words of the Psukim. And Rashi is teaching Torah, Chumash, to a 5-year-old. He's medayik in the Psukim. Until you bring your korban, there's still a connection to the Makar Damah, to the original blood. Kumteis as the Tarev was felt here, the Tarev which she's lacking, is nit blois. Weil sie hat noch nicht gebracht dem korban, because she's missing something. Nor weil es ist verblieben Toma. There's a remaining Toma, mim Makar Damah. So what the Rebbe is saying is, why is Rashi saying that she's Kruya Tmeya until she brings her carbon? Because the old Tum is still left. It says in the Pasuk, until the carbon, there's still Makar Dameh. Right? And that's a diak also. You may Tara, she's completely purified. But Kruya Tmeya, when you learn Chumash Rashi, you're learning Psukim. The Psukim say what Rashi is saying.
Well, I can't say Michal she eats meya because she still has that old tummy.
Because it says you may Tara. The psukim contradict one another. You say you may tahara, and you say b'makar dameh. So the pshara is tameh you're not, but kriyat meya. You can't just say that she's missing tahara, kriyat meya, because you're connecting her to the original blood even after she's no longer tefillim. Okay, there you go. So now, we went through this quite quickly. It's unfortunate that we have a little sikh, and now we went through it quite quickly. The Rambam and the Ravid are not such a big problem. The beauty of the sikh that we just did is the way the Rebbe is showing you why Rashi goes in his middle space. And what the Rebbe is showing you is in the words of the Chumash. If you have no Gemara, just Chumash, you're going to say what the Rashi says. You have no choice. When you put together those 3 psukim, pasuk number 1, Yemei Tahara, pasuk number 2, Mimkar Dameh, and pasuk number 3, Vitahera, you have no choice but to come up with this category called Kriyatum. You have no choice. It's meduyik in the psukim. And that's what Rashi is doing. He's teaching a 5-year-old. So he says to this 5-year-old, Tomei she's not. But Torah she isn't either. She's Kriyatum. At Kan, the limud of Rashi on a technical level. Okay, now the Rebbe says B'chabakash. And I want you to understand that what we're going to learn now in Sif Hey, and in Sif Vov, and in Sif Zayin is not going to work for Metera, it's not going to work for Zava, it's not going to work for Zav, it's only going to work for a Yeldus, which means that you could re-ask the same questions on all the other Mechusei Kippurim. What would Rashi hold by Mechusei Kippurim besides the woman has a baby? Is she Kriya Tumah, Karei Tumah, or not Karei Tumah? Because the way the Rebbe is now going to explain, and the Zava,
that's what I'm saying. There's no Makar Dameh
by Metera. But a Zava, basically, from Achleikis. Whether it's the same blood or different blood. The halacha is that the Dam Nida and the Dam Zav and the Dam, that's all the same blood. It's all the same, it's physically exactly the same blood. So it's the same exact Makar Dameh. Sifhei, es bleibt noch aber nicht mut. Still the question. Okay. Rachi doch nicht gesehen von Allah is. So how go for cash? What is Rashi telling us in saying that a woman who has a baby who went to the mikveh is not tummy anymore, but she has a label of tummy? What's the reasoning? Last paragraph on page 84. And the Emma says this is Pshuta Shomekar. This is not true. But at this point, the Sikha becomes, I don't want to call it Chassidish, because it's not Chassidus, but it's Musar. It's Avoida, you know what I'm saying? Wer man das verstehen, the answer to explaining what's Rashi's understanding of this expression, I'm not tummy anymore, but I still have the old label of tumah, behegdem is another kasha. And the emes is this kasha applies to all the B'chusrei Kippurim, but this answer is only going to work for Yoldas. Shegeret kama po'am. We've discussed multiple times. As Rashi b'pirusha v'ateira verantwortet alle Shailis, v'stel dich im Pshutish Mekher. Rashi in his Pirush has to answer every question that Rashi Chumash answers. And if he doesn't ask a question, it's a simon that the child figures out himself. If Rashi doesn't know an answer, he has to say every single time, Lo yadait. And there's a half a dozen, or the Rebbe wants, in one of the footnotes of the Kutasichas, the Rebbe has a list of every time it says in the Chumash Lo yadaiti. Rashi answers every question in Pshat, and if he doesn't know, he says Lo yadaiti, and if he doesn't answer, and he doesn't say Lo yadaiti, it's a simon, it's not a kasha b'chlal. Here comes the Shaila. Favos gefindt man nicht, why do we not find, as Rashi's on Mavayz in dem Tam, that should give a reason, was I told us that a woman who has a baby, da bringen chatas l'kapor. Why is she bringing a sin offering? What'd she do wrong? She had a baby. Biggest mitch from the Torah. Now what does it say in the Gemara? What does it say in the Gemara?
She made a switch.
That when she delivered the baby and she had so much pain, she swore she's never going to have another baby again. So she bring a chatas on that shvur. Yeah. But the 5-year-old kids don't know that stuff. 5-year-old kids don't know that stuff. Why is she bringing a chatas? Vos farachet is sie begangen? What kind of sin did she commit? As he so daven have ma kapora, that she needs to have a kapora. Okay, skip the bracket. You should skip it. Upashut amen kenit zogen as Rashi philosopher of the Gemara. Nor can you say that the pshat in Rashi of the Gemara says ados is der far was beshosh keras leilit kaifetes v'nishbas v'chulu. That the Gemara says that a woman, when she delivers a baby and she has so much pain, she swears she's never getting pregnant again, and that's what the chatas is for. Because befrat as a film benemis. Because if Rashi held that, he would have to say that. If Rashi held that her kapara is for swearing that she's never gonna have another baby again, he should say so, or at least hint it. So the Rebbe Muzman Zogin, you have to say, as the bechomish lemikra fashtetes me atzmei leid pshutashem mikra basarachenga len kidolakam. That the child knows the answer from what he learned before. You don't have to answer the kid why a woman who has a baby brings a card mechatas to take away the shame tumah, the kruya tumah. The child knows it already himself. From what? Eitzadas. B'shas men lered, isha kitazriya v'yolda v'toma kameidin in das dveis. When you learn in the Chumash that a woman gets pregnant and she has a baby and she becomes tummy like a tumas nida. By Pashas Yoldas. Der Mond is gleich auf ein Ziro von Isha Leida v'tzah. That there is an immediate corollary between having babies and having pain. The child thinks right away. Why? Because he was a little boy, he was still in grade 1 when he was paying attention. And they learned in the Chumash that the Esef Tel Dibonim, every time a human woman has a baby, she suffers. Animals don't have a hard time delivering babies. At least most of them don't. And there's a biological explanation. One of the prices for bipedalism is that the legs are too close together. It's a simple thing. Animals are the legs are wider apart. This is biology. Because human beings walk upright, there's not enough space to deliver the baby. It's a scientific thing. It's a simple thing. The Pashtazah. But the shadish of it is Chatei Tzadas. From Chatei Tzadas, walking upright, a woman has gewaldige tzai when she delivers the baby. The kid knows that. He hasn't forgotten it. In Pashas Bereshis, was der Eibish had gesagt Chava. In Pashas Bereshis, Shem told Chava, noch ihr chet be'etadas, after she participated in etadas. Vel Isha Omar, Hashem said to the woman, Arba itzvei neich ve'herei neich, I will give you great pain. Be'etzev tel dibonim, having children is going to be depressing. Yede leida, every birth, skip the parenthesis, is an eifin from be'etzev tel dibonim. Every birth is painful. Tzara leida, pain of birth. And hota zich achelak me'ha'enish of chetei tzadas. When a woman has a baby and she experiences pain, she is being mechap v'chet etzadas. Because the pain of delivering a baby is the kapor of etzadas. What about the man? The man has to go to work and he works in the field and along come the parasites and the who knows what else and they ruin his crop. We pay for chet etzadas with pain. The woman's pain is the pain of delivery and the man's pain is the pain of labor. But the Eibishter gave us an oynish. And if it's an oynish, it's a kapora. The pain of delivering a baby is the atom chet etzadas. Yeah? Right? Says the Rebbe, Azei is as eich mevi tuma. For the same reason that the punishment for chet etzadas is pain, the pod for chet etzadas is tumah. It goes together. In footnote 43, the Rebbe says, "Lahoyer mishayches chet v'tumah bepshut shel mikra." In pshat, there is a direct association between sin and tumah. Bepsukim masmuchim lifnei zeh v'lei titamu behem b'chol hasheres. If something is connected to an avera, it's automatically connected to tumah. So if a woman has pain when she delivers a baby, and that pain is connected to an avera, along with the pain is also tumah. Turn the page 86. Umizeh is move on. This explains. A woman who has a baby is being karmachatos. And again, this only applies to a yeldus. It would not apply to a mitzera. It wouldn't apply to a zav. It would apply to a zav, which is a tzarachi and gadol. How would you explain those chatois with those mechutz kaparim? Huh?
The mitzera is explained.
How?
It's hara, whatever it is.
Here. Okay, fine, perhaps. But it's local. The chatos is being explained here only for a yeldus. Whatever woman has a baby, but yederish is da from chet etzadas. There's a trace of etzadas. That's the bring on kapara. There's pain connected to the oynish of etzadas. Automatically, there's tumah associated with etzadas, and you have to have a kapara. Bracket. Al der, this is special for you. Al derech v'irashi Hashem friyem afarish geveh b'negechet ha'egel. Ubei yipokte Rashi says that the Eibishter Yid made an egel. And the Eibishter was furious. And he forgave the Jewish people. And he said, Ubei yipokte fakadati, says Rashi, Tomid, kish efked aleim avineseyem, ufakadati aleim ma'at, min ha'aven hazeh. That whenever the Eibishter punishes Jewish people, he sprinkles in a little extra punishment to Chet Egel. It's a similar thing here. Every time a woman has a baby, it's a punishment for Chet Eitzadas. So you sprinkle in a little extra, which is the chatos for that kapara for that aveir. Siv Zayin.
Is that a legitimate reason or just a Ben Chamashimika reason?
First of all, Ben Chamashimika is very legitimate on the level of pshat. It's a very legitimate reason.
Why is it more have to come up with another reason?
According to the Gemara, it's not a kash. According to the Gemara, the chatos of B'chus HaKapurim is not for einish.
Yeah, so the reason that they should
But what about a Zavan and the others?
Good, we're talking about
Yildus, here.
Because she's having tsar
the reason
as a
why
kapara for chet etzadas,
so she has to bring a car.
Is a raya
to
that she's still connected to that oynish.
that oynish, so therefore you need another kapara karmachatas.
So automatically the tum is also connected to chet etzadas. And for the tum she needs a kapara. Loi dem bir. According to this pshat, that a woman who has a baby, the pain is a raya that she's still linked to Eitzadas, and therefore the tumah is still linked to Das, and therefore she needs a kapara. In Tumas later, but Eich Musber, it also explains that Rashi is mefaraj and vart ve'kriva, that you bring a carbon of two, a kinim, or whatever it is, for chatas and eila for kapara, misha hu ba lechaper beya tarat loy. On whom the atonement is needed, the purity depends. as the tara from the isha lyhadus is totally dafkin and karmachatas, that you have to bring 2 karbanos, but the one that's going to take away the tumah is the chatos. The one that take away the shame tumah is the chatos. For kum to kapara, the Rashi says that if you didn't bring the oil and you only brought the chatos, the kriyas tumah went away. Weil the tumah kommt durch an inyan was auf haben kapara. The tumah is connected to something which needs kapara. Is the ribbe the tara von der tumah verbunden damit was sie bringt der kapara. The chatos is the key part of the carbon because you're not doing it. You see, if you would say like that Rambam, that you're missing tara, you could say that the oil is more important. It's like Chuvia law after Chuvia Tatov, it's doch deure and after praklit. But since Rashi holds that it's still connected to an Aveda, the Iker the Chatas and not the Vapia now, Yuvan v'yumtach, it's understood that Hemshech and Pirush Rashi, what Rashi says later, but gleich noch sein Pirush and all of v'yikrivu. After he says v'yikrivu, that the Chatas takes away the Mechutz kapara, in welchen is madigas die tara von Yeldis is verbunden mit dem kapara. Is a mamshech with the heli become pure mekalcha ad kan kriyat me. Until you bring your chatas, you're still called Tomei. If you brought your chatas and you didn't bring your oil, you're no longer called Tomei. Noch dem wie men weiß, once we know, as the tumah von Yeldis is verbunden mit chatas, that's the tumah is mit chatas das. Und der Rebbe is the tara verbunden mit ihr kapara, the purification to do with the chatos, which is the atonement for that, is verstandig. It explains ad kam kruyat me. She's not Tomei, but she has a name of Tomei. That I feel noch them with the Tomei for the nifgevan. She's not actually Tomei. Or because man zet noch nit ihr kapara, she doesn't have her kapara, is kruyat me. She didn't do an avera, Chava did an avera. She's not Tomei, but the fact that she's suffering for Chava associates her with Chava's Aveda. So she's called Tmeir until she brings the Korban Chavas. The mitzvah is echt verstandig. It also explained Lamay nafkamina ech bepshute shamikra kani kriyat me. What is the significance of calling her Tomei if she's not Tomei? Whether is achilas kadishim if the prohibition of eating karbanos. For the employees mitadem was he felt nok marataro. We like the Rambam says. The Rambam says, until you bring your carbon, you're missing tar. So the Rebbe is a funny thing. A woman was tmeya. She went to the mikveh. She counted her 40 days. She can now eat truma, yeah? But she came to the Beis Hamikdash. She's not rushing. Rushing. Okay, but I have to go to the Beis Hamikdash. I'll bring karbanos. Hat an Ort, als die Isha wird sich nicht misdare sein, zu bringen in ihr Korb. She can eat truma. She's not Tomei in her home and in her environment at all until she goes to the Beis Hamikdash Lil Regel. What's her rush? She'll bring the karbanos when she has to go. Men gefindet Achiv of Ayesol zu sein in a Matze von Tare Bechtei zu kennen essen Kodishim side lifting Regel. When Yom Tov comes, you have Achiv to make yourself Torah. I wonder if the same applies to a woman. Women don't have Achiv Aliyah Regel. But until then, I don't mind staying Tomei. I don't mind staying not tired. I can eat Truma, I'm good. But you tell this woman, listen, you can eat Truma, everything is good, kosher b'yosher, but you have a label of Truma. Biz, yes, is the verbunden der mitzvah, es felt bei kapara, she has a shaykhs to Truma, because shaykhs to an aveda, and she's missing a kapara, is doch moving as he's after Mazdara sein, chol efshir is chapav, and she's going to rush to get rid of it. So the Rebbe just gave us a nafkamina l'maise, if not la'aloch, between Rashi and the Rambam. Since according to the Rambam, all she's missing is an extra tara, there's no rush to bring the korban. But since according to Rashi has a name of Tumah, she's rushing to get rid of it. That took less than an hour.
That's all shaykh to women.
Huh?
That's all shaykh to women.
Now the Rebbe finishes the Sikha by saying that the Eibishter keeps his own mitzvahs. The Eibishter keeps his own mitzvahs. So the Eibishter has a chiyuv to be mizdares to remove from Yidden the shame Tumah. The last part of the Sikha is a Hirah, but it's a Hirah to the Eibishter, not to us. That just like a woman, because she has shame Tumah, kriyat man, she's going to be mizdar to get rid of the Tumah, the Eibishter has to be mizdar to get rid of our Tumah. Nice, nice, yeah, shame. I wouldn't call this an easy Sikha, but we got through it nice.